NRL Fantasy Buy, Hold, Sell round 16. We're halfway through the major buy rounds. I'm Longy. We got Biz here too. We're going to be talking about all the buys, cheapies, pods, holds, sells, and all the options, as well as some news on Koloa Matangi. Now, before we get into that, Biz, how you feeling, mate, after last week?
Last week, atrocious. Dropped a couple of K ranks outside of the top 5,000 for like the first time since week one. I have faith in my squad, but it's getting harder and harder to stay focused after a week like that. But back on the radar this week. What about you, Longy?
You potted up, flew too close to the sun there. From my side, I bumped up a bit. So I was about 1,300 coming into the round. I went to about 1,000th. I was looking good until Talis Duncan made that second line break. I was thinking, I'm just going to stay in the top 1,000. But Talis Duncan just kept producing plays, which look bittersweet. I'm happy because we recommended him to everyone, but he's not in my
He's in my
side,
team.
so.
Mate, without him, I would have been totally in the dumps this week.
Well, speaking of him and his teammates here, big key on Koloa Matangi. Big news has come out on this one. So I popped it on the Instagram story. A reshare of NRL Physio did a breakdown of this. So if you do want more detail, just jump across there. But basically, the news is he's not going to require surgery on that facial fracture. And that means he's day to day. So highly unlikely I would expect that he plays this week. I think that's pretty ridiculous, even though he is named on the extended bench. Good chance he plays next week. But the thing you can really pretty much guarantee, and I don't want to say completely guarantee, but pretty much guarantee here is he probably plays in round 18. And that's when we need him most. So if he's playing round 18, he is a firm hold. I want to address this at the start because I'll throw to you too. If he was out for 2 weeks, let's say, and that's not even confirmed, if he's out for 2 weeks, would you hold him for sure?
Yeah, if he plays round 18, hold him for sure. If you missed round 18 and then he missed round 19 because of their buyout sell, that's pretty easy, I think.
Yeah, banger. So keep Koloa Matangi, guys. Make other trades. Keep him. He's a season-long keeper. He plays around 18. It is such a simple decision. Now, tearing into the buys before we go into pods, cheapies, holds, and sells. Jerome Hughes and Eli Katoa are the first two here. A couple of Storm players, and a bit of context here. The Storm have an interesting run now. So they're basically out of buys here. They play round 18. They play round 19. They have a great run of fixtures coming up. So the Rabbitohs this week missing a lot of troops, especially if Latrell doesn't back up. And they've got some easier matchups coming up. Now, that Jerome Hughes, Eli Katoa combo, I'm going to put them together for this video because really they do play off each other. I think the fact that Hughes is back to his best, looking uninjured again, is going to benefit both of them. Biz, are you jumping onto Jerome Hughes this week? And if not, do you recommend other people do?
Look, I think Jerome Hughes is a good buy this week. I think you just have to temper your expectations. He's not going to be the player you got last year. He probably looks a bit spotty this year. Like he will mix up really solid games like his last 85 odd with lower games. And that's just, Hughes has years where he's buying away a fantasy stud, averaging close to 60. And then he has years where he's in the high 40s, low 50s. And this is one of those years. So you get him in 576K, don't expect a 55 to 60 average. Should be a pretty consistent 50-plus scorer, or when I say consistent, he'll average there. But it's probably going to be built up of a couple of big scores and a couple of lower scores. I think he will be a very popular trade in this week, given Hines and a couple of others are on buys this week. And even if Hines wasn't on a buy, who wants to keep him right now anyway? But I think he'll be a popular trade. And Eli Katoa is a lot more interesting one. I'll leave him to you, just given that he was your boy last year. You owned him when it was 1% ownership and it paid off for you. Are you getting back on the train?
Yeah, Eli Katoa is special to me. So he's an absolute weapon. And I think the fact that Hughes is back on fitness, it benefits him a lot. I need a back rower on my side, so I'm going to try and find a way to get to Eli Katoa. I think this run of fixtures really benefits him because he's a try-scoring back rower. And I think we've seen this year that mid-50s average come on the back of better base stats as well. So the run meter's there, the tackles are there. He's in a really strong position. Are you considering Katoa at all here, or is it just me who's jumping on the AliExpress?
I definitely would be considering him. I'm pretty packed for edges. I've still got Hosking, and Wong has been almost untradeable last 2 weeks with huge scores. So he's one on my watch list if Wong finishes off round 16 with the weaker score and he's unavailable in 17. But I'm, with Couchman and Koloa Matangi and all these guys, edges are not a spot I'm worried about right now.
So Wong looking like a season-long keeper with that recent form. Now, guys, quick update from us. Really exciting thing for the channel. We have incorporated a couple of partnerships into the show as well. So I just want to duck away and have a quick word on behalf of one of our partners. Those of you who have followed the channel for quite a while probably know that I've been through a pretty big shift over the last 12 months. I stepped away from the stability of a full-time career and jump headfirst into running this podcast, our community, and TVC Live. Now, it's been a startup. It's been exciting, fun, fulfilling, and at times completely overwhelming. And don't get me wrong, I feel incredibly lucky to be doing something I care so deeply about. But chasing your dreams full-time comes with a lot of unknowns, pressure, self-doubt, and a bit of uncertainty there too. It all adds up. Therapy is something I've used in the past, and it's something that I'm planning to return to now as I navigate to this next chapter. And having someone to talk things through with, especially when you're pushing into new territory, it really does make a difference. Now, today's video is a paid partnership with BetterHelp, as they're on a mission to make starting therapy easier. When you sign up, you fill out a short questionnaire, and you get matched with a credentialed therapist. If the fit doesn't feel right, you can switch therapists at no extra cost. Click the link in the description or head across to betterhelp.com/casual athlete. So just betterhelp.com/casual athlete, and you'll get 10% off your first month of therapy. Talking to someone could change the way you see things, and look, I think it will for me. Now back into it, Jaden Campbell, 731K, and he was an option a lot of people looked at last week. These two guys, Campbell and Tedesco, they're a couple of guys I bought last week on the back of that Fletcher Sharp news. Just thinking, you know what, I've got Ruben Garrick, I've got Tommy Turbo, Fletcher Sharp in a bit of doubt last week as well for playing this week. I needed to beef up the wing fullback spot. Now, Campbell pumped out a 75 last week. He's got a Parramatta matchup this week that is tantalizing. I'm going to throw to you on this one. Is Campbell a buy right now, even without playing in round 18? And would you consider captaining him at all?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of buys, look, he doesn't play around 18, but I don't have him in my squad right now, but I'm still thinking of buying him anyway, just because I think I have the troops I need for 18 or close to it. And Jaden Campbell's the guy who can have a big score on any given day, evident by last week, and he's going to end up probably close to the best fullback in the game. So I think you can get him in this week. I will be looking to get him and Hughes in this week. I don't know how the maths will work. I'll figure that out later. But I think he's a great buy. In terms of captaincy options, well, the thing is, Parramatta's defense has looked a lot more stoic recently. I think I've tried to hype up a few players against them in recent weeks, but their defense has been a lot sturdier. Now, I'm not saying that they're, the top defensive team or anything, but I don't think they're as easy a funnel through the middle or around the edges as they were to start the season. Like that first month or so, everything was guaranteed captaincy against Parramatta. But now, I think with Terrell May fully fit, coming off bye, I mean, Terrell May's worst game is most players' best game. So I just don't see any reason to experiment unless you're really behind.
My concern here with Para, though, right, is because I agree with you, I'm captaining Terrell May, but Parramatta are missing Dylan Brown and Mitch Moses for this game. So you've got Josh Papali'i, who hyped young junior, but this is his first game in the halves in first grade, and Dean Hawkins, who, to be honest, has done a job for Parramatta in the past when he has gotten the shot, but they're not Mitch Moses and Dylan Brown. So I worry a bit in this game that Parramatta might struggle a bit, and Jaden Campbell only needs half an invitation to jump into the game and dominate. So we could see him potentially step up and be absolutely massive. So if you do want a pod captain, I'm not against this one. The other guy here is Jimmy Tedesco at 716K. So very similar price point. Both of them had good games last week and dropped a bit of cash. Both of them are primed right now. We're going to get into the hard conversation of which one do you choose if you don't have either. But Jimmy Tedesco has been pumping out huge numbers. So even last week, I think it was 250 meters run, 5 tackle breaks. That's just a regular week for Tedesco. Now for him, mid-50s average looks like it's going to happen there. Round 17 bye is a bit of a challenge. So if you've got too many Roosters players, you probably don't want to get on Tedesco because round 17 could be tricky, especially if you're holding Koloa Matangi, who's no guarantee to play round 17. So it is a bit tough with Tedesco, but if you're short on Roosters players and if you have a deep squad, then you can basically buy him without worrying. And for me, I think it's just Savala in my side for the Chooks. So I've got Savala who won't play round 17. I have Tedesco who won't play round 17. And then I'm like many who has Lawson, who I don't really trust to play in round 17. So for my side, I'm pushing the limits there. But what are you thinking here for Tedesco, Biz? Do you think he's a must-have or someone that you want to squeeze in?
No, not really. I just think there's a lot of good wing fullbacks this year. I mean, Tedesco's humming along. He's 250 meters a game and he's pumping up mid-50 scores. But Jaden Campbell's kind of doing the same with less effort. Like the best thing about, if you ask me which one I had to pick, it's definitely Campbell, all right, dual position. And the best sign I saw with Campbell last week, 700 kick meters next to Kieran Foran. And that was the only concern, is that will Kieran Foran coming in hurt his kick meters? if anything, he kick less than Brimson, right? I feel like the only thing that could stop Jaden Campbell is if Tom Weaver came into play 6, but I think he's far down the pecking order. I think it'll be 4. I think it'll be Brimson, and then Keanu Keeney is probably coming back towards the back end of the year. Hopefully, touch wood. I haven't heard too much. I just know that he's looking for a final, kind of end rounds return. So I think the Jaden Campbell story is well and truly firmed up. I'd be picking Campbell myself, especially at a very similar price. But in that being said, there's absolutely a case to have both of them, especially guys like Drinkwater, etc., who are just inconsistent. Already a couple of single or below 20 scores this year. I'd rather Tedesco than someone like that. But, I would pick Campbell over the two of them.
Yeah, Drinky's a tough one. We'll talk about him in the holds and sells section. The other one is Carraz, who has a bye this week, so he's not getting mentioned. Garrick has a bye this week too. So a lot of teams are finding they need a wing fullback right now. I'll sort of preface it by saying I reckon there's a big case to be made for Tedesco over Campbell. And it's not on this week's scoring or next week's scoring because Teddy doesn't play, but just that round 18. Like, round 18 is absolutely brutal. Now, if you're going to get both and you're getting one now and you're getting one in round 18, obviously it's, Campbell now, Tedesco later. But at round 18, like, have a look at your team. Like, really have a look at I'm not talking to you, Biz, but more people at home. Like, have a look at your team and really think about it.
I'm
my
looking
team
too.
is dire. My team is...
Wait, you have Lord
light.
You have Trbojevic. He's good.
I'll have a full 13 pretty quickly. Like, I'll be okay. But I'm looking at some of the players, like Tommy Turbo at center, Lawson at center. Like, they're about equal, I would say. And then, it's pretty rough. I'm relying on a few players to keep their spots. So Tedesco is a massive booster. That's part of why I bought him last week. If I was choosing, though, it's Campbell now and it's make way for Tedesco later. I think you want to have both.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. I just finished on that. I think I brought in Munro last week just for a bit of coverage in 18, which gives me comfort to go Jaden Campbell over Teddy. But I would say 100%. If I needed players in 18, I think Tedesco is a great option.
Yeah, I might chime in too. Drinkwater will be about 550k next week and have a match up against the Titans, who have been leaking. So I'm going to look closely at that one as well. 550 for Drinkwater could be interesting. But it's got too many of these guys who are sort of fringe starters. Now, Talis Duncan, 507k. And look, I didn't hop on. I didn't need the forward pack support last week. I had a bunch of guys who did pretty well, actually, in that spot. But I'll throw it to you because you bought Talis Duncan. Why did you buy him last week? And does your perspective on him change on the back of the 70-plus score?
Yeah, I got it a couple of weeks ago. I just needed mids for last week, and thank God I did, or I would have been in dire straits without him. Look, he was 420-odd K when I bought him, priced at 31, 32. Career average playing 80 minutes at edge was about 43. So I thought, okay, he'll get me through the buy rounds. It's good value, dual position, excellent schedule. Look, I'll take some 40s from him. And look, that's what I expected. I expected low 40s, but I was rewarded with 58 and 75 or something like that. Look, am I buying him at 507k? If I've got the troops, then probably not, right? Like, he's kind of made 100k in the last couple of weeks. He's now priced in the high 30s. I do think he falls back to earth. The last two games, last week he did have 2 line breaks and a try. That would probably take those out. It's mid to high 40s. And then the week before that, in the 56 points, 57 points, had a line break where he had 4 or 5 tackle breaks in the one run. He does have a few negatives in him. And we've seen even this year when he's playing edge for 80 minutes, he does have a game where he can give you a 25 and 35 and just drop the scoring. Unless you really need mid support, and I assume, or mid and edge support, which, given all the play, everyone has May, everyone has Couchman, everyone has like Koloa Matangi right now. And if you're holding all them, then I think it's hard to fit Duncan in. But he's no longer really a cash out either, where you could make 100k to spend elsewhere. So I think he's a great buy. Like, I know I've just hyped him down, but I think the case at 507k is quite different to the case at 420k. So I personally, unless I really need that dual position support, I think there's better cash out options this week. Especially if I assume not many people need Talis Duncan in this week, given you only need 13 players. So that's how I think about it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. As I look at the numbers here too, I sort of see this and I go, right, Eli Katoa, 697k, Talis Duncan, 507k. It's 190k. It's a bit of cash, right? It's a fair chunk of cash, but it's not a crazy amount of money difference there. for getting a keeper or a pseudo keeper at least versus a guy that you're going to want to get rid of in round 19. So I'm with you there. I also think South Sydney's attack is going to struggle. And I think he's had a few nice attacking plays, but they're going to fall off a bit over this next period. They're missing a few troops. You know, they got Latrell backing up, no Jai Gray, Koloa Matangi out this week, maybe next week as well. So I think they might struggle against the Storm this week, and I think it could be a bit of a return to earth for Talis Duncan. And if we're saying the Storm are going to attack well, then we're saying they're going to miss tackles for South Sydney. Duncan could be one of those guys. So he's a solid option, but he's not as good an option as last week. But at the same time, if you do need a guy at 500K and you need a dual position, you need a round 18 coverage, he is the best player in that group because the job security is pretty fantastic. Like they're keeping him in that edge back row spot. So I like him enough. But yeah, I'm with you. Just tempering expectations a bit. The other four players we've picked in this five are potential season keepers or close to it. Duncan, probably a tier below that. So you want to be careful with buying too many of those guys if you're low on trades. Now, the pod list is pretty spicy here, man. And it's, I have to talk about Bostock at some point. So it's him, Pappenhausen to talk about too, Reece Walsh, Jack Howarth, Real Smoky, and Corey Jensen is just outrageous. Now, Bostock's the first one here. And you saw last week, Biz, he pumped out that 100+ score next to Herbie Farmworth, who pumped out 99. That edge is lethal. They are unstoppable. And it makes sense to say that if you think Herbie Farmworth is going to be a killer for the rest of the year, then his winger should be decent as well. And at 300K last week, I think it was 310K. He was an interesting little cash out, just didn't play round 18. But this week, you look at him at 400K. I think it's a minus 25 break even. My view on this is you don't buy players just trying to make cash at this point of the year. So I'm probably out on Jack Bostock. But if you're an a head-to-head coach who has a bunch of trades, and maybe you're behind on cash, there are certain teams that I would recommend look at Bostock. But for most overall coaches, for me, he's one that you're just going to let go through. Do you think the same way here, Biz, or do you think he's one to stick to?
Yeah, I mean, I was tossing up him on Monroe, but he didn't play 18, so I went Monroe. And 103 is weight, but flushed in the pan. Look, he's had games where he's played 80 minutes with 1 or 2 points. Like, just easy pass for an overall player.
Yeah, the average is 30 there. And then Pappenhausen, Walsh, I think you're in the same boat here. Slightly different form, different prices there. What do you think of these two, man?
Yeah, Pappenhausen's an interesting one. He's been playing okay, especially because he had the goals back for most this year without really setting the world alight. I think the attractive option for Pappenhausen is that the softer run and no more buys. I will say, though, that I just think he's like at 640K, he is definitely below the upper echelon or tier of fullbacks. So I personally couldn't recommend it with how many good fullbacks there are this year. I think last year it was a lot more dire situation, but this year, your best players are by far and away Sharp, Campbell, Tedesco, Latrell. I would have Pappenhausen well below that. And if I wanted to go for a discounted potential keeper who has good buys, I'd go Reece Walsh myself after Origin 2, because if Ponga has another bad game, then there's a chance Walsh makes game 3. But especially if Queensland get the win, or Ponga has a worldie, then I think Reece Walsh is a pretty safe bet to buy in this week at 470K. He's really bottomed out. And I suspect he'll play a lot better with Ezra Mann back at 6, just given that I think he was having a lot more struggles gelling with Ben Hunt versus Ezra. Did score 2 tries in his first game back last week, which only got him to about 49-50. But the signs were there. So I'm looking pretty closely at Reece Walsh this week. I think you do need a player like me who's kind of had a couple of bad weeks, might need a couple of potties to get back up. But I think Reece Walsh is a better option than Pappenhausen, simply for you're pocketing 170K. And like we just said in the buy section, that's the difference between a Duncan and like an Eli Katoa. So if you'd rather give me Reece Walsh and Eli Katoa and then Pappenhausen or like someone else, I'd take Walsh and Katoa, just knowing the upsides there.
That's juicy, actually. When you frame it like that, Katoa and Walsh versus Pappenhausen and Duncan, yeah, it definitely leans in the Walsh direction. I will say, like you said, you mentioned this about Origin, but I just want to hammer this point. He is the next guy up for Queensland Origin, and he is the future Queensland Origin fullback as well. So if Walsh comes through, if Ponga comes through this game looking a bit injured, or if Queensland lose in general and they're just sort of playing for pride game 3, thinking about the future, they've shown that they're willing to pick Tom Dearden over Trey Evans, right? And look towards the future, even though it's probably a worse configuration for them in terms of having 2 6s and minimal kicking game. But they could easily go Walsh over Ponga in game 3. So I personally wouldn't recommend Walsh if Queensland lose. I would only recommend him if they win. If they win, then go ahead with Walsh. But if they lose, it's quite risky for round 18. And with Walsh's injury history, he would miss round 18 and round 19, and then he has a bye in round 20. So you'd have a 3-week stint, potentially with him out if he did make Origin. And that's with him having a pretty tough matchup against the Sharks this week too. So I just sort of look at him and think, there's a lot of ways this could go wrong. And there's a few ways it could go right. Let's see Queensland win first before we jump onto Walsh. Pappenhausen, I'm a bit more bullish on than you, I think. So I reckon the Storm are set for a massive run to finish the season. And I think Jerome Hughes being fully fit really opens them up too. He's very direct. We've seen Cam Munster hitting form recently as well. Pappenhausen on the back of that's going to score a bunch of tries. I just think he is set to light it up. And if you want a super pod, I think he's the kind of guy, especially with the goal kicking, that could average 60 plus for the rest of the year. So I just reckon I'm not going to get him in my side. But if I needed a wing fullback this week, I'd be looking very closely at Ryan Pappenhausen. Now, another option here, Jack Howarth in that Storm team, is probably one that you're rolling your eyes about at home if you had Howarth at the start of the year. Look, he's dropped a bit of cash this year. He's at 407K. He's pretty cheap. He was not putting up good scores at all at the start of the year, even though the Storm were dominating. He's now back in the side. I'm throwing him in here, him and Jensen in here, just as desperation plays. So the pods list is not a serious list, especially at the bottom of it. And Jack Howarth is a guy who, I don't know, I look at him and I think, all right, he's averaged about 30 points a game this year. That's with an injury game. That's on the back of one try this year. He's the kind of guy who could get hot at the right time, and he's quite young. Like, that development happens at some point. He does jump up. This stretch could be really good for him. So if you're desperate for a center and you don't want to spend a lot of money, I like Howarth more than I like Bostock, for example. I actually think Howarth could potentially benefit on this run, but he also could just continue to plod along. So it's not a guarantee. Bit of a pod speculator could be an option.
I mean, he does look about 7-8 points underpriced, just what he's been doing at center in 80 minutes. He did have that very low game. I think he scored a couple of points where he got injured. So I'm actually seriously looking at this because I assume a lot of coaches will be in the same boat as me, where Farnworth and Lucas are your centers, and neither of them play round 18.
Yeah.
And you've got Lawson already plodding along. I don't really want to spend big money on a third center, just given how reliable Lucas and Farnworth are scoring there. So a guy like Howarth, to a person like in my side, is actually a pretty good option. So I'll be thinking about that one closely, but I understand your points, Longy, where he could be another 407K plotter. But I think he does have upside. And if you believe that the Storm are going on a run, like you argue for Pappenhausen, then by that, you should assume Howarth would score a few tries too. So I wouldn't mind that option. Corey Jensen's a more interesting one just because, look, he was an absolute weapon to end last year. But now with Carrigan in the prop rotation and, Hyington getting a lot of minutes. Hetherington getting a lot. Oh, man, I was just thinking, remember that photo? Remember that photo of Hyington last year? Like that AI-generated photo? You know the one I'm talking about. Anyway, off topic. But Jensen just needs the minutes. And it's hard in that forward pack just because they're giving Kobe a lot more minutes than they did last year. And Carrigan and Haas are just a huge minute players. But this is probably the time where he could make some money, given that Haas and Carrigan backing up all the way from Perth this week. And then they'll miss round 18, where Corey Jensen should get the bulk of minutes. So there should be some big scores on the horizon. Is that enough to make a few hundred K? Probably not. But is it good for a couple of scores at a cheap price and then a guy you can just plot away for the rest of the year? Worse options. So I don't mind it.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I will say he's contingent on one or both not backing up this week. That's what I'd need to hear in terms of news where I would consider Corey Jensen. My side, I'm already pretty stacked at the middle forward spot. But if you're a team that has no middles for round 18 and you've already got Duncan, I prefer Duncan over Jensen, and the guys didn't back up from Origin, Carrigan and Haas, then you might get a good stretch of games out of Corey Jensen here. Xavier Wilson's at a similar price point, but I think he's less likely to absorb bulk minutes than Jensen is. So I've chosen Jensen over him for this list, man. Now onto the cheapies. Spoiled for choice this week, Biz. We've got a few guys who have pretty serious scoring potential. So Sifa Talakai, we've seen before. Latu Fainu, Isaiah Karapani. We've got Tyrone Munro, who you mentioned before, and Jed Stewart at 230K. Now, Talakai first. We'll talk about him. Moeni Hirodi is out for, I believe it's 4 to 6 weeks. We've got Kale Iro is out for a long period as well. So it looks like Talakai potentially, if he plays well, has the job at center for about 4 to 6 weeks. Now, we've seen him in the past. He pumps out a big average in that sort of 40s area. And the Sharks definitely need his attack at this stage. So 295K, if I was a head-to-head coach, I'd buy him instantly. As an overall coach, I don't know how many non-keepers I can squeeze into my side who don't play round 18. Are you considering him at all, Biz, or just letting this one go?
I probably have to let him go just on the fact that he doesn't play 18. I think he's a good option. I think he can have some big scores while he's there. Like we've seen what he can do at center. And at 295K, it's a great proposition. But yeah, there's only, it's 21 spots in your squad, and I don't think I can give a couple of easy. I think I'm actually higher on Latu Fainu, the next guy on this list, and it's actually because he's on the bench. I actually think I'm a lot cooler on Latu Fainu at half. And the reason for that is if you look at his cup stats, when he's playing at half at 80 minutes, he's kind of a really mid to high 20s player. And that just gives me big Kane Elgi vibes. And no one wanted Kane Elgi, right? So,
Mate, that's an OG. That's an OG
reference. Yeah. So for the for the watchers here still remember Kane Elgi, I put in the chat, man. Like show some love for Kane. Anyway,
if you remember Kane Elgi, drop a comment.
That's old school days, man. It's just showing my age here. But I think Fainu last week, the week before, he was playing in the lock rotation and edge, just roaming around the middle. And he came up with a pretty good score, good PPM, because he's making quite a lot of tackles. So I think that is an interesting proposition to me, and he should make some money. The flip side is he could go from the bench to a starting half role for Heath Mason. Arguably, I think that makes him worse. But at 269K, he plays round 18 as well. And, there's not a lot of great halves in round 18. If you don't want a Jerome Hughes type, Burton's obviously the 18th man. So, Cleary's not there, Katoa's not there, Hines is not there. A lot of popular halves won't be available. So a lot of people want to be stacking like King Togia and things like that. So Fainu, I think he's a good option this week.
Yeah, we'll say if you need him for round 18. I think that's the thing there. But he's like all these guys on this list, they're guys you get if they suit your purposes. They're not guys you tear your team apart to get. So Latu Fainu, like you said, if you're not getting Jerome Hughes, if you're short on halves for round 18, you get him in as a cash out. You're absolutely sweet. Josiah Karapani is interesting. So currently he has a spot over Selwyn Cobbo, who's been dropped. Cobbo was dropped a couple of weeks ago. They had a bye. They've come back. He is still dropped. He's off contract, I believe, at the end of the year too. And I think looking at options elsewhere. So I sort of look at that and think, all right, well, Cobbo's probably out of the Broncos picture there. Karapani's the guy at the moment. The best possible Broncos team has Cobbo in it, which makes me worry a bit about Karapani. But he did play well in that last game. Admittedly, they put on 44 points against the Titans. So for him, 297K, only available at center, plays round 18. We talk about the center spot being a bit dire. Karapani could be a solution. And there's every chance that he's dropped out of the team and, he's not in the squad next week or the week after. But there's also every chance that he just keeps that spot and keeps plugging along. We've seen Broncos wingers scoring tries. Could Karapani be a beneficiary here? Do you consider this one at all, Biss?
No, I think he's good while he's there. But I mean, there's no way. I personally would not be leaving Cobbo up for long. Like, if you're putting a rocket up his backside, I get it. But Cobbo is by far and away one of the most talented young players in the game. And yeah, he might be moving on from the Broncos. But if Maguire's taken this year seriously, he's in that best 13, like you said. And I wouldn't be surprised if Cobbo's back in the next couple of weeks. And by all reports, he's playing pretty well in reserve grade over the last couple of weeks, playing a mix of fullback and center. So, look, I would not be going for Karapani just based on that. I'm a bit higher on Munro. To be fair, I did buy him last week. Bit
of bias, mate.
Yeah, a bit of bias. But I do think Munro is a bit underpriced. Like, I think he's not great, but he's probably 7, 8 to 10 points underpriced. I think the Souths team is a pretty good setup for wingers. We've seen wingers feast for them before, and especially with Trell loving those cutout balls, good connection with Munro. He's a very fast, lanky, attacking player. He did score a try to end last game to only end up with 25 points, but that was just chasing a kick and putting it down. I do think there'll be some boom games from him where he scores a double or a hattie. He kind of has almost like a Khan Pereira sort of profile, like very fast finishing winger who can score a few tries. So there'll be boom games, there'll be trash games. All I really need was some coverage where I didn't want to spend that much money. Plays 15, plays 18. And I'll cash him out round 19, round 20, probably, or just keep him as a last man on my squad for the rest of the year. So I think he's a decent option. By far and away, not the best option. Like I'd take Talakai and Fainu over him, but he's not. I'd take Munro over Karapani myself, just because Munro, that's his spot. He's their next gen winger. They're going to groom to be that try scoring winger when Alex Johnson retires. So I don't mind it.
Yeah, if I'm giving you my thoughts on Munro, I think this next 3 weeks is actually the worst period for him. And then he gets really good after that. So full strength now.
I don't disagree. Yeah.
Like the matchups are tough, right? And you got Latrell back out from Origin, who probably won't be at his best. They're missing a few players. Like they're going to get smashed this week. I just see that. And then whenever I say that, by the way, the team doesn't get smashed and they have an upset. So maybe take that with a grain of salt. But Tyrone Munro, like I think down the stretch of the season, as a guy end of your bench, bit of a loopholer potentially at times if that's set up well, could have a few boom games down the stretch, but I do think he will struggle to score in this next 3 weeks. So whereas Karapani, I think, has a bit more potential, but then the Broncos will be depleted from Origin too. So yeah, nothing is really ideal. And then steps up Jed Stewart at 230K for Canberra. Now, this one, when you first see it, you think, oh, sweet, Jed Stewart. It'll be the Stewart connection. It'll be just like Cleary and Cleary at Penrith. It's going to be the next generation of fantasy captain here, Jed Stewart. And then you look at the stats and you realize it's more Flanagan sort of connection there. I actually like Kyle Flanagan, by the way. But
Flanagan has actually
the reference.
Yeah, Flanagan is putting up some big scores next to King Togia. He comes off a 3-round average of 50 plus. So
we talked about that, by the way. We said he dominated kick meters. But for Jed Stewart here, though, let me give you the numbers. It's a mid-20s average in reserve grade on the back of about 110, 120 meters run, and very little else there, right? A try every second game. So that mid-20s in reserve grade, pretty light for him. Now, if you're looking at buying Jed Stewart, you think, all right, well, maybe, Canberra's on top of the table. He'll get given a bunch of tries. So that 25 average in reserve grade will be bumped up by attacking stats. Then you remember owning Savelio Tamale, and you remember him receiving not a lot of attacking ball, from his inside men and more creating tries for himself. So I think Jed Stewart's in a position where I think he's going to really struggle to produce points. And unless you're desperate for a 230K guy who plays round 18, he's just not someone I'm putting on the radar at all. In fact, if Alan Fitzgibbon from the Titans played around 18, I'd probably recommend him over Jed Stewart. That's how sort of low I am on the scoring profile here. So personally, I think this one's one that you let go unless you're desperate for a cash out and you're ready to cop a 15-point game in round 18.
Yeah, he gives me Jalen DeGroot vibes. But
look, it is very similar, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wouldn't. I mean, you can watch it. You can wait and see how he goes this week and next week. I assume no one needs Jed Stewart this week, given you only need 13 players. If you need Jed Stewart this week, good luck to you. But I will. I mean, that's rich coming for me since I scored like minus 20 points last week. But look, I think just wait and see on him. I mean, on the flip side, like cup stats aren't everything. Like look at Katonga, right? Average cup stats and. He came in and scored pretty well in first grade. So who knows? But I would not be buying him this week.
Yeah, I mean, let's see it first, right? Now, tearing into the holds and sells. So hold section, getting a lot of questions about some of these guys here. So I thought I'd include them all. And our favorite Nico Hines is the last one on this list. So excited to talk about him with you. But Fletcher Sharp first, 729K, been named this week. A few people are asking about, should I go Fletcher Sharp to Jaden Campbell? Should I go Fletcher Sharp to James Tedesco? Getting a bit excited about last week's score and sort of seeing that little DNP next to Sharp. Now, as much as a calf injury is a bit concerning for a guy like Sharp, relies on explosiveness, all that sort of thing, I still think you just keep him. I wouldn't even consider selling Sharp myself. Even if he didn't play this week, I'm still not considering it. I think he's a season keeper. And you throw in the fact that you look at that Newcastle backline this week and you go, all right, Dylan Lucas has been fully fit for a bit now. He's looking good again. You've got the backline 1 to 5 of Kalen Ponga, Dom Young, Dane Gagai. Then you go to Bradman Best and Greg Marzu. So 1 to 5, it's absolutely lethal. All they need is a half to put them in good positions. Now, Fletcher Sharp, you could argue he's the dominant half at Newcastle. I mean, you could probably argue Ponga's the dominant half at Newcastle, but I just think there's so much attack that's going to open up
I,
here. And I think
I
Newcastle's
don't
attack
think
is going
there
to
is
get
a
better.
dominant half at Newcastle, mate. I just don't think. I think it's sort of the wild west of backs back there.
Well, it's sharp time, man. I think he's
Yeah.
going to go on a tear. And I think Newcastle is going to, this is controversial, but I think they're going to light it up down the stretch.
I did say that at the start of the year, it just never happened. Look, Fletcher Sharp, top 3 fullback to end the year. Absolutely hold him. Not even a question asked. Tarpanay, he's again bona fide. Still one of the highest averages this year. A lull over the last few weeks. I mean, every player has lulls. I'd be still playing him. He plays round 18, so I think you have to at least hold him to 18 and potentially move him on in round 19. He's going to be probably the second or third best mid available in round 18. You're going to have Terrell May, best mid available. Then you'll have Koloa Matangi who'll be available, and then guys like Cashman, Tarpanay. Like you just want them in your team, especially because you put Cashman and Koloa Matangi in your edges, etc. So easy hold for mine until at least round 18. So I wouldn't even question about trading him this week.
Yeah, just a lot of people thinking, all right, Campbell costs $7.30. Who can I sell? I think that's what I'm getting a lot of DMs about. So
absolutely, I get it. I get it.
Joey Tarpanay. Yeah, you got to keep these guys though. Then Scott Drinkwater, $595K, massive break even, probably gets down to about $550K next week. If you have him in your team, you stick with him. You stick with him. He's a bit of a roller coaster. That game last week was disgusting. They were missing half of their starting team, and it was all of their best players except for him and a couple of other sort of shining lights. But I would write that off as a blip on the radar. And personally, I'm buying Drinkwater next week before he plays the Titans and then plays round 18. So I think
he's in my team. I'm holding him. Like he's had 2 atrocious scores, but he's actually been pretty good outside of that, especially given how dire the round 18 fullback situation is outside of Tedesco and maybe a couple others. Like I think you have to have Drinkwater. I think at $550K, he's an absolute buy next week. Like he could be top of our buys next week or the week after that. So you're holding him for sure, and you're not getting good value for him at $595K. So I would just be holding on to him. Savala, he 45 tackles from half. I sold him. I just thought that next to Sam Walker, he wouldn't be that strong, but Sam Walker got injured. Look, it didn't cost me that many points. I think, King Togia was actually pretty good last week, but I know you had Savala in your team. You must be stoked. He has a bit more runway in him yet, and he plays around 18, where there's not a lot of great halves, like we mentioned. Look, I think he's a great scorer. He's only had a couple of lower scores, but Roosters are still playing well. He getting the bulk of kick meters. He likes to tackle. He's a tall, lanky body. And there's attacking upside too. So I'm loving Hugo Savala. He put our next guy, Hines. He showed him how to actually play fantasy football last week. But I mean, you're holding Savala through round 18, round 19, I assume.
Yeah, definitely keeping him. But I bought Jaden Campbell because of the sharp news, and I needed wing fullbacks for this week anyway. So I actually played Campbell over Savala and took the 45 from Hines. Because like my read on it was, I thought it was going to be a grindy game. I didn't think he was going to rack up attacking stats. I thought it was going to be a bit dirty, that game. And it was grindy and dirty.
It was,
and he made 45 tackles. Like, it's just totally absurd. So, I'm happy to make the cash here. And he's the guy who keeps the spot there. So he's going to keep making cash, play round 18. Round 18 is dire. I don't want to use any more trades than I have to on round 18. So anyone who plays then, I'm basically just keeping them. And Nico Hines, the last one, doesn't play round 18. But put the question mark there because a lot of people are selling him. A lot of people are saying, all right, I'm sick of Nico Hines. He's underproduced, blah, 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 blah. The man's priced at a 45 right now. So the question shouldn't be, is he underproducing for what you bought him for? 750K, 700K. The question should be, is he underproducing for what he's worth today? Now, 45 average priced at, is he underproducing for a 45? Over the last 2 weeks, yes. Over any horizon longer than 2 weeks, no. He's actually been fine. So I look at him and I go, there's the potential that he lights it up and gets hot again. I think that potential fully exists. I think Cronulla need him to do that. Otherwise, they are no hope at doing anything this year. So I think he's going to try to do that at some point. We're going to see that running game really come out at some point, but we haven't seen any indication that it is going to. So that's a bit of a hope and a prayer from me. That's probably me being a little bit biased as well towards holding guys who have potential because I run a bit lower on trades through this part of the year. That's usually my strategy. So a guy like Hines, I'm always going to stick with. But I just look at it and I go, right, well, Nico Hines to Jerome Hughes biz, like that kind of trade, they're close to the same price. And I think the scoring profiles are quite similar. I think that trade is sideways.
Absolutely. Sideways. I mean, like it's not like Hughes is killing it this year. Like you're looking at 2 guys who have historically been really good, this year have been so-so. You're going from one so-so guy to another so-so guy. Just, what's the point? I mean, yeah, Hughes plays 18, no more buys, but if you had the choice 5-6 weeks ago, like we did, it was Hines or Katoa, and you chose Hines. You chose wrong. That's fine. Like,
We messed up.
We messed up. I put my hand up. I messed up. Katoa's is by far and away better. But I do think Hines will have a 3-game average of 70 at some point. Hopefully this year and not in like 5 years. But look, he's there. He's doing okay. I think he had 5 or 6 games in a row where he scored mid-50s. So, like you said, priced at 45. I think, It's easy to get frustrated and play emotionally, but I think at 613K, just like I said, for Drinkwater, you're not selling at this price. If anything, he could have a hot couple of games at 600K and he's a buy. I would just hold him unless you really were desperate. Because he is a player, like, he's scored 1 try this year when he scored 75. So the big game does exist. It's there. Sharks are a team that are streaky and they can get hot. So hopefully it comes sooner rather than later because I really need a boost from him.
Man, he was a whisker from a try assist last week too. So that would have bumped him past 50. If he scored 55 last week, we wouldn't have been talking about this, right?
No.
So, yeah.
There was 2 try-scoring opportunities where he dropped the ball, or he could have got an assist or scored himself. So he could have scored 60+, but he's playing scared at the moment. But I think it only takes one big game to get his confidence back. And look at Hughes. He's been plodding around all year, and then all of a sudden, 85 points. Just got to hope that's coming for Nico as well.
Yeah. Hughes one is a bit different, though, because injury.
Yeah.
Hines, it's I don't know what it is, but look, they need to fix that for them to be competitive. And they're a team who is touted for premiership contention this year. So it has to happen, right? So I'm holding Hines. You're holding Hines. We're saying hold Hines, but do what you're going to do with him. Now, the sells list, this is a bit more interesting. And we'll finish on Tommy Turbo at the end, but it's Hamish Stewart, Olakau'atu, Jenkins is an interesting one to talk about, and Jacob Safidi. Now, Hamish Stewart's the first one. He played basically no minutes last week, went back to that 20-minute role. We put him on the sells list last week as well. Didn't trust him as a scorer off the bench. He proved that to be correct, and at 509K, it's a good price point. He's one you want to sell again this week. Do you have any questions about Stewart there, Biz, or do you want to jump straight to Olakau'atu?
No, I reckon this list is pretty straightforward, so I'll let you run with it.
Yeah, cool. So Olakau'atu, obviously that shoulder injury going for a try. Unfortunately, doesn't get officiated the way Sua Wong does, so didn't get the try given. That's a bit of a joke, by the way. We're not going into reference, but Olakau'atu is out for an extended period now, so easy sell here. Tommy Jenkins, my view on this is he's got a low break even, so he probably makes a bit of cash this week, but he's playing in a Penrith side without all their origin stars up against the Warriors in New Zealand, who are an absolute juggernaut right now. So I think the Warriors pound the Panthers into the dirt, and I think Tommy Jenkins playing on the wing of a team that's getting pounded into the dirt is not going to score very well. But again, whenever we say this, there's always a random upset. So if you want to keep Jenkins, you're a believer, do it. I just personally think if you have a trade that requires selling Jenkins or Hines or whatever it is there, then you pick Jenkins, who's about 80K cheaper than Hines, but not a guy who's going to be effective as a scorer for you. Jacob Safidi, 446K. If you've held him all this time, you're holding him for around 15. He has disappointed you. He's not back again this week. He's not a keeper. He's a guy carrying a pretty major injury here and had a bit of recurrence of it this year too. So he's an easy one to sell. And then Tommy Turbo, we'll have a chat. Turbo, Biz, going to center. What's your read on this? Like, how do you feel about Turbo moving to center? Do you think that dual position round 21 is going to be worth it, or do you think it's just going to be dire for him?
No, I actually think he'll be all right at center. I mean, look, when I say he's all right at center, I'm not saying he's all right at center for the 50 average Turbo that we've expected over the last few years. I'm saying he's all right at center at 400K. But like at center, like at fullback, he's not doing anything. Like he's scoring mid 40s, which a lot of people are complaining about. But by the way, he's 400K. Like you give me mid 40s at 400K. Like you're happy with that. Yeah, I don't think anyone bought him with the expectation that he's going back to that old Turbo, right? But I don't mind it because the dual position and exactly he's not in my starters. So he's in my 18 to 21 part of the squad. And with those players, you want dual position coverage because you want them, they're your cover. So the more they cover, the better for you. And I think, he's jokingly in the cells, but if anything, it's a good thing for him because I assume his injury risk is lower playing in center, like with the hamstring. Like, yeah, he's in the front lines, but we've got to remember that his injuries are not from contact half the time. They're non-contact, like hamstrings and things like that, soft tissue injuries. So I think being at center, less meters run around the field over the course of the game is probably good for him. And we have seen Manly centers can be pretty lucrative. Like obviously we've seen Garrick play really well. And then, Koloa, he's less good in fantasy, but in real life he's pretty productive. And I
Recently
think
productive though. Koloa, I will say, recently a lot better.
Recently productive. He with what Koloa actually, I've been noticing he's playing a lot more fullback or roaming around. He kind of leaves his center spot, which I think is a great call for Seabold there to run him around a bit because he's such a weapon. But I actually think Turbo is a good buy for round 18. Obviously, you don't have to buy him this week on the buy. You don't have to buy him next week either. But in round 18, if he plays well in 17 at center, I think he can still be good enough for base stats of 220 to 30 and then attacking emphasis on top. So I absolutely don't mind this for Turbo because like at 400k, I don't really care. I prefer more consistent scores, which I think you'll get at center. And I'd rather just him stick around, which I think is more likely to happen at center than at fullback. So yeah, he's good enough.
Yep. And dual position as well. So it'll be round 17, 18, 19, 20. So if he plays uninterrupted, he will have 4 games before round 21 review, which means he'll qualify as a center. So if he stays at center, you get the dual position and you have a guy at 400k who has a bit of pedigree and could potentially get hot at the right time on your bench as an extended guy. He's not a guy you're going to be starting week to week. And worst case scenario, he goes back to fullback and doesn't get that dual position. And then he's a pretty good scorer there too. So, I think you're right. I think we've seen good work rate out of him recently, but he doesn't look good. I will just shout this out.
Doesn't look good, but running for 250 a game. So,
well, that's nice, but he had a few opportunities last week where he got the ball in positions where 16 of 17 fullbacks score a try and just didn't quite have it. And I guess it's those injuries sort of catching up. I've got no doubt he'll have some great games in the future, but right now it's looking a bit dire. Not a sell. Potentially a buy. We'll talk about that in the future, but yeah, he's in the wars right now. Now, last one we're going to talk about here is Brendan Piakura as the finish.
I was going to bring him up if you didn't, because you said you needed an edge, Longy, and my mind went straight to the man himself, Brendan Piakura.
He's been red hot, mate. He's been red hot recently. Brendan Piakura. Look, he's named to start again. My one reservation is that we've got Jezewski back on the bench. And we know Jezewski, Lord Jezewski, as you call him, could easily come and steal some minutes there. So I think that's pretty terrifying. The issue is Jezewski and Piakura, they're both not guys who play any other position, nor is Jordan Ricky. So if Jezewski's on the bench, he's taking minutes off our GOAT, Piakura. So that's my worry there. But, I mean, if you're desperate for a guy at 400K, and you want to have a bit of fun and, ride the meme wave, any team with Piakura in it will get a shout out on Discord this week, basically. That's what I'm going to offer up. So anyone who wants to jump on Piakura, you're ranked 50,000, you're not too worried about it, jump on. I think he has some big attacking games in him.
He has scored a few 50s in the last few weeks. Other than 16, he's got like 3x50 games. Like, he's not bad. Like,
what's the best case? Like, rotation-wise, him and Jezewski, what do you reckon?
Yeah, I mean, if Jezewski stays in the team, I think it's like 60-20, 50-30. They do both need 80 minutes of the total garbage. Yeah. So, it is a desperation play, but Piakura is not really a PPM guy as well. He's like a big play guy, I feel like. He'll score those 50 points, but he'll score it in like a span of 15 minutes. And the rest of the game, he's just losing points. So, you never know. If he, I guess, in saying that 80 minutes always means more opportunity for those points, but it's also a chance for him to miss tackles when he's tired. So if he's playing the first 50, 60, he could be pretty decent. Like, maybe not expect a 50 average, but maybe he can get to mid-30s.
And for him being the mascot, right? Like, we took Talau through the process. We got him out. We made him a bona fide gun. He's struggled. He's struggled without our support this year.
Yeah.
But Brendan Piakura, what would be a graduation story? Like, does he need to finish? Does he need to get past 500K? Like, is that the number? Like, what do you reckon?
550K, I think.
550.
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's a hard mark.
It's an elite school over here. We only
thinking maybe 500. Because if you're still here, let us know. Should it be 500K, 550K, or what should the pass grade be for Piakura to graduate the school of fantasy plotters of the casual athlete?
Yeah.
Because then we're going to think about who we pick next year too.
Yeah, and if you're still here thinking of what Piakura needs to graduate, what class would Kane LG be teaching if he was a professor at the academy?
Professor of casual athleteotomy. Mate, beauty. Well, look, good sesh today. Good sesh. Bit off. I mean, look, everyone's running out of trades at this stage, so we can have a bit of fun with it. Cheers for jumping on though, Biz. Thanks everyone for watching as well. And look, good luck this week. Personally, I'm thinking I might save trades. I might make a couple. I think you're in a similar boat. So let's get into it, guys.
See you next week.